Hey world, welcome back to another episode of Be Inspired Podcast where we're inspiring you to live the abundant life you deserve. I have another awesome guest on the line, Nikhil. He's a CEO, startup investor, and partnered with multiple different companies such as the NFL, Microsoft, and L'Oreal, and spoken at over 70 different events. Man, this guy has some gems for us today, and I'm interested to get diving into it. But before we get started, I just want to say thank you guys for everyone that subscribe, like, share. Thank you all. Without you guys, this show won't be able to continue growing. So thank you guys. And welcome, Nikhil.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Sam. How's it going, man?
Doing well, doing well. I'm excited about this because, man, you got a lot of leadership experience and a new book you're working on. So uh,
A
I
lot
know
going
you're
on,
excited.
man.
Yeah,
Keeping
yeah.
busy.
That's good, man. So I guess I'll start with what inspired you to launch your first tech company in high school. That's
Yeah, going back to the beginning, man. No, it's
yeah,
great. It's interesting because I was always like when I was growing up, I was big into, video games and just like general like media, like technical things, right? Robotics, video games, I don't know, just something about the digital world always really
yeah,
fascinated me. And one thing that I sort of learned about and that was sort of taking off when I was in high school was like people were becoming YouTubers for the first time back then. It wasn't quite like the social media era, but it was like the beginning of that sort of digital creator, digital economy sort of thing coming into play. And Web 2.0 actually was like the big new term at the time, right? So like WordPress was one of the biggest platforms in the world for
yeah,
like websites, right? Like that era, material design from Google came out. So the way the web looked like was changing. And so there's just something about at that time, I don't know what it was, man, because I was pretty normal high schooler going to sports and doing all this cool stuff. But I just started hearing from, friends from the internet, I was on Reddit a lot, right? And I saw
yeah,
people that were my age, doing things like this around the world, right? Starting their own e-commerce businesses. I think Shopify was like a year old when I got started, just like crazy to talk about, right? But all of that inspired me to think about, all right, what can I do outside of just like sports extracurriculars, right? I wanted to go to college, but wanted to, was kind of like exploring options for the future. And yeah, man, first tech company. So it was at that time, it was a digital agency at the start of my high school career. So I was like I was actually building Shopify, e-commerce, whatever sites for people. My first big client was actually my school district. I built like some of like websites for teachers and web
yeah,
apps for teachers so like they could present homework online and stuff. It was really, really weird for that time. Like at that time, it didn't seem like anything big. And now I'm like, wow, there's companies that have made, billions of dollars off of doing things like that. Right. And at the end of high school, I had my first venture back startup, which was in the hospitality space. So by the time I was like wrapping up high school, I was already working with like Marriott, La Quinta, Wyndham hotels, things like that on a sort of a voice AI thing, it was a little early for its time, right? It was like
yeah.
Alexa was still early. All these voice things were early, but it was a cool experience. And it was the first time I got to be part of an accelerator and get like angel investment and all that kind of other stuff. And yeah, led me to move to the Bay Area too. I'm originally from Minnesota, but part of, being like in the tech world is also the opportunity to explore new ecosystems. And obviously as a high schooler, that sounded really interesting since I was sort of leaving home anyways. So yeah, man.
So like, how were you able to like get with those big name companies? Because a normal high schooler,
Yeah,
just going through
yeah.
high school, like, how did you make those connections?
Sure. Two secrets. I didn't tell anyone I was in high school, right? I think a lot of
Okay.
people assumed I was in college at the time, and I just like kind of kept my voice deeper, right? So that like worked. That was one thing, right? I was like a
Okay.
Peter Parker double life kind of thing, right? And the second thing too, man, and this was sort of from earlier in the career, is when I started that agency, right? A similar thing, like you have to do a little bit of, I think the word is like peacocking for lack of better terms, a little bit more, you can't just like play all your hands. You have to seem like you're building something legitimate. Is that,
Yeah.
you start to just build relationships with your clients, right? I started going to, actually I should kind of give context, like some context on those events I was going to. I started going to tech conferences very early outside of the digital realm. Once I got into running my own agency and building websites for people, I started learning that at that time in Minnesota, there were actually a lot of tech conferences going on, a very random tech hub, but it was for Web 2.0, like those JavaScript conferences, PHP conferences, Ruby on Rails, like they literally had stuff every other week. And so I just started going, right? And I started as an observer, and then I started just network, right? You start to slowly meet people, you start to build relationships, you meet organizers of these events, you go up the chain, and it's people that are, doing bigger and bigger things, right? And my approach was at that time, it wasn't just necessarily going to get clients, it was to learn and to get mentors, right? And one of the biggest, probably like game changing things that got me to, the point of like going into this accelerator and, going into, getting into these big clients is by essentially building a community and building a tribe, right? It takes a village because I had all these people who are supporting me from the, for the agency and for things I was doing to give back to this web community. And then that kind of translates, right? But then when you're calling in a favor later, like, hey, do you know anybody here, there, everywhere? Those relationships are like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'll make an intro right away. And when you have people who are passionately pitching your business for you, right?
Yeah.
Also, besides yourself, that's an unlock, man. That was and I've kept that principle going throughout my whole career, and that's been the progression, right? I hate to say the common thing, your network is your net worth, and so like I'll even sort of flip it and say like it really does take a village. Like it's not just about net worth, it's not just about networking, it's about actually building relationships. It's getting people to see the passion that you have and echoing passion that they have, giving back, value add. Yeah, so I like to take that story all the way around because yeah, like I mean, even people who are several years into their career, I think often don't realize how powerful their own network can be if they went out and did their own idea, started their own company, had their own initiatives, nonprofits, whatever. And so I keep preaching that because I think that's
Yeah.
something that even AI can't replace, right? Jokingly, but it's like, that's the power of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me some of the books that you had to read to help you get up to that speed so fast, you know?
Oh man, yeah. It's funny because I started as a software engineer, right? So all the books I was reading was like JavaScript for Dummies and all the like old there are all these like guides, right? The initial big thick books of like how to write code, right? So it was me with a book in front of me and then a computer set like a laptop setup and reading it line to line and trying to. Oh man, it was crazy. Like we didn't have YouTube University wasn't big enough. It was coming up, right? Like
Yeah, it
how to
was
build your
brand
own
new.
Airbnb clone and stuff. Man, I'm trying to think of like the first book that I think I didn't start reading startup books, to be honest. I was reading a lot of like Jobs, like the Steve Jobs book obviously was very inspiring. I can't remember what the book was called, but the story of like Salesforce, like Benioff also was a high school, like he started first business in high school, Zuckerberg. Like there's those stories of like, young legends, right, who start early and how they get ahead. So I was reading like a lot of those kind of books. I think a couple years in my career, I found like the Lean Startup, which is like really cool because I actually met the author just last year. I got by coincidence at that's Eric Ries at like a random conference. But after all these years, his was really good. Um, it's more, it's interesting because I don't really consider this book as good as it was back then because things have changed. But
Yeah.
0 to 1 by Peter Thiel is pretty good.
Okay.
Not a huge fan of the guy anymore. I can publicly say, but I think I like his writing. Like I like the way that he presented things back then, and it was a good thing. So yeah, I would say like there's a lot of those like more big books that you would read. But I would say at that time it was also like this, I was literally reading like the books that were like how to start your own agency and things like that. And it's surprising because I think that, maybe these days those things would not translate as
Yeah.
well because everyone is sharing that. But back then, those were like, quote unquote, the Bibles of the era, of just like they were the first to do it. They were the first to write about how to start a digital agency and build a thing on Shopify. So if I remember those exact books, I guess I can share them, but they wouldn't be useful anymore because they were just
Yeah.
they're the 2013, 2012 edition, right? But yeah, kind of an interesting like I didn't just go for like inspirational and leadership stuff. I went for a little bit more holistic and also the leadership stuff on the side. Yeah, that's how I would kick it off
Okay.
there. Yeah.
Sounds good. So, like, when you were building and learning, how were you able, because it's a different mindset when you start to grow and scale. So, how were you able to get out of the operator mindset and be able to teach and scale your fellow teammates and your network that help build your business?
Yeah, man, it was really I will say there's a huge mindset shift that I think is like extremely underrated because as like a founder generally and as a CEO now and talking to everyone who's getting into the space and how AI is accelerating everything, there is a sense of like I want to do everything, right? And that's totally fine. Like I think I do agree that you can get so much farther as a founder, but I mean, it's not even to discredit all the amazing automation and tools that we have, but there's something about being able to have like one other person who can hold you accountable, who can help you, access networks that you previously can't. Like you can't possibly do everything at once, right? No matter how good AI is and no matter how much it can help, because there's industries you might not understand. There's nuance to different communities that you don't understand. And, maybe AI will help us get there even faster, but there is, again, that relationship building part is a big part of it. And even like sales to some extent, like I think people like buying from people. And while AI can help us create the collateral and even maybe take the first call, I think closing and I think that delicate balance of, building those relationships to get the right partnerships going and things. Those were things I did not, even pre AI, right? Even back then when I was like a solo operator, there was like the sense of like, no, 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 I could do this all myself. I'll just like keep building, I'll keep going. But getting out of that mindset and finding, the right support network and understanding what that support network can do was just, I can't exaggerate this enough. It changed everything, right? That went
Yeah.
from that was a multiplier on the capital coming in. That was a multiplier on getting investments. I wouldn't have gotten those things if I'd kept brute forcing. Like you can only do so much cold emailing. You can only do so much like, networking, right, as an individual. But if you have people who are again selling your business for you, champion you, it's a funny thing. Like I think in business, I find that it's actually good if people are talking about you behind your back, even if it's kind of like, ideally not negatively, but even if it's like neutrally, even if it's not people like preaching you, right? It still means that there's like a sense of your brand and your business doing its own marketing, right? It's like the network effect, it's the domino effect, right? So
Yeah.
I always found it useful to personal branding is what we all call it now, right? And back then it was like call it something totally different. It was just like, people were just calling it like, digital presence. Digital presence was like the Web 2.0 term. And I just followed some of those principles of like, okay, like I don't need to be famous or viral or whatever, but let me just like kick off a few dominoes and let me like, get feedback from people and work on my pitch, go to the right conferences, share the right video of me speaking, get on podcasts, run podcasts, right? I was doing similar things back then, but I guess, for different business and different reasons. And then, part of I won't get all into it right now, but I was gonna say like my book is focused on sort of the concept of like consistent iteration and adaptation and prioritizing like what you need to do to continue evolving, right?
Yeah.
And this mindset shift was probably the biggest, like literally the biggest jump from like, solo business owner, agency owner, building websites for fun to like building a system, building an operation, and then being able to like do other things, right? And give back to a community and keep that compounding effect going. Momentum, right? Velocity.
And then also, like, what was one of the biggest lessons you've learned throughout all that time, throughout those 14 years of like building, like, working, leadership, all of that? What was the biggest experience? I mean, the
Yeah.
biggest lesson?
The book is literally the result of this lesson. So I'll share it fully. It's like I call it the art of like the pivot, basically. And also like coming out of the mindset that like change is good. I mean, it can be scary. It can be, risky, right? But there's good and bad risk. There's good and bad change. And being able to consider that and to, take those steps to like move your mindset, shift, like move the needle, right? It needs to come from a mindset. It needs to be strategic, but it needs to come from a mindset and like an openness to that idea that like things might shift overnight if you turn the needle enough, and you have to roll with that. You have to roll with the punches a little bit, but it might be a way greater reward at the end. And that is sort of the difference between me being, going from solo business owner to startup founder to what I'm kind of doing now. Like these are it's a more than a decade of progression, but every year has been so unique and so different while still keeping the core authenticity of what I'm inspired by, what I try to do, my values in community and all these other things, right? You sustain those things, but you make some changes in even the rooms you're in, right? Like I'm grateful for all those mentors that I had back then. But,
Yeah.
and I guess this is like a good word. I didn't even bring it up earlier, but like the concept of like outgrowing something, right? And it's really funny I say that because I started in high school where I felt like I'd outgrown that, and I'm a college dropout too. So I'd outgrown that as well. Like, like it was all these different points that, it's even holistically in life, you can like look at these things, but in business fundamentally and in leadership, being like putting pride, go hubris, everything aside and thinking, you know, I need to outgrow something. I need to go to the next like level. Having that realization early on in my career is what led to, a storied, adventurous, what I would consider for myself successful. So I'm still going up, right? But what I would
Yeah.
consider successful and got me to where I am today. So, yeah, I guess it's like the concept of like, but it's like the pivot, like a positive look at pivot and
Yeah.
abundance, by the way, too. I greatly champion, the scarcity versus abundance mindset. But abundance comes with like, you can't just think abundantly, you have to act abundantly, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I consider pivots and outgrowing and shifting and all that kind of other embracing change, all that fun stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
So biggest
man. And
lesson,
yeah.
to go.
Yeah, and as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to learn how to pivot. You have to be able to learn how to adapt to change because everything is always changing. Like, for example,
Yeah,
social media is always changing. If you're
man.
marketing on social media, if you're marketing on the
Yeah.
internet, it's always changing. So you have to be able to navigate and pivot that, you know? So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's moving faster than ever, and
Yeah.
it's probably not gonna slow down, or at least it's gonna, like it's probably gonna stay at this level of rapid change for a long time, and I think we have more tools to help us get there, but again, if you don't know what to do with those tools, it doesn't matter. AI isn't gonna, like, magic you can't it's the joke, right? "Claude, make me $1 billion." Like, that's not how
Yeah.
that works, right? So, yeah, just some food for thought.
So, what's some advice or some things you would tell a new entrepreneur that's starting up their company?
Ooh, yeah. Okay, so back to the relationship thing, big time, right? So back to the like, don't go at it alone. Like, it's fine to be a solo founder. It's fine to get kick off and get started on your own and in your own head a little bit, right? But like, make sure to get out of your own head a little bit early, right? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs have like a bit of a curse of like, again, it's like I want to do everything. If I don't do everything, I'm not going to be successful. I'm going to be looked down upon. Like, I think not even like negative ego, right? There's positive pride and ego too, but there's that like imposter syndrome gets to people very early on too, because there is a lot going on and the world is moving very quickly. But to put that all together, your unique intersection of experience, life, everywhere you've traveled, everywhere you've moved to, everything you've lived through, everything that you've been through in life is an opportunity for you to build something out of that, right? Positive, negative, but like ideally you want to like rather you want to take the positives and negatives and turn it into something consistently positive, right? And consistently abundant. And so I really tell people that one of the only ways that I've like, and again, there are people who might argue and debate with me on this, but I don't think that like isolation, and there's a lot of like grind set, and like there's a lot of stuff, the content out there that talks about like you have to go into your fortress for like 3 years and come out a new man or whatever, new woman or whatever. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't think that's very useful. I think that's like fine for I don't know, like there's some mindset of like I don't know, hunker down when things get tough, but it's not like don't fully isolate yourself from friends and family. Like your tribe matters, right? Your tribe will get you so much farther. As cliche as that might sound, for whatever reason, I don't know. People like tell me it's cliche, but I don't think it is. It's like
Yeah.
it's a tale as old as time. It's a tried and true method of people in business who are building those relationships, even if they have small teams, right? The crazy part is like my team right now is not huge, and that isn't necessarily because like I don't want to keep scaling. It's because I have things that are outside of like I have partners that can take care of different aspects of marketing and whatever. I have a network, right, that can allow me to sort of supplant having to have salespeople. I have word of
Yeah.
mouth and referral. There are benefits, long-term benefits, and everyone eats, right? Like everyone can benefit from that, but it doesn't mean like I don't have to have an fancy office or a big team just to show that it works. I just have a strong network, and a lot of people I get to hire and work with now are people that I've met through my network. So they're tried and they're true, and I've seen them in action, right? And now I can work with them and do
Yeah.
even bigger things. So that like I'm kind of talking about the whole progression, but it goes back to basically, don't do it, don't take it alone, right? And also understand that like I get back to the pivot mindset too. So retain that idea of like if you feel like things are stalling, it usually means something's got to change. Like I don't know
Yeah.
how else to tell people. Like you can keep brute forcing, but it's usually going to be you hitting a wall. Like it's time to make a slight adjustment and go around the wall, right? And then there might be another one, but you keep pushing, right? And then also, yeah, like understand the unique. I love that. Like I don't even remember where I first read it, but that idea of like your business, not as an idea, but as a leader, if you take all the positives and negatives in life and turn that into positives, conviction, leadership acumen, right? You're going to be the most powerful leader ever, right? You'll have empathy, you'll have understanding, you'll have a better understanding of people, right? And who you're running and what your vision, and that's important. I think people often underestimate how much their own life can influence how good of a leader and how high they can go, right? Just
Yeah.
just because that imposter syndrome and stuff can set in. So yeah, there's my spiel. Three kind of pillars there. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And what would you say is a essential pivot you think most leaders and founders are avoiding right now?
Oof. That's an interesting one because it's like, I think. Oh yeah, okay. I think this one's like maybe even a little bit controversial, but I've kind of mentioned it a few times. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it's like there's an over reliance on tools sometimes. And look, I love the explosion of SaaS and vibe coding and everything, right? But it's very similar to what I said earlier. It's like those tools. You could have 100 tools. I promise you, have hundreds of tools. Even I don't know how big your company is, but you got all these different tools, and it's not the difference between you making a million and a billion, right? It's not the difference between you having a good product. Like it will do a lot. I guarantee you it will do a lot, but without the right understanding of where those tools are properly going, and even and there's also like it also comes down to like a noise thing, right? Like you might try to ask five different LLMs for different answers, and that's fine. But it's like make sure to understand what's essential, right? Like that is the concept. It's like understanding that you don't need all these tools, you don't need all these guides and chatbots and whatever to like run a successful business. I think you need a few good ones, but it's almost like I'm almost like sort of going meta here, but it's almost like understanding the essential is the big essential pivot, because I think noise is easy to get drawn to. There's a lot of like fun in testing everything and trying everything. And I agree, like do that for your own experimentation and fun, but there's no reason to like try to force something just for the sake of like trying it, right? Or just for the sake of being like in the know. Like find a few things that matter, use your time wisely, figure out what is essential from a tooling standpoint, from a visionary standpoint, from an idea standpoint, and then proceed, and add things over time. Like be steady with it. So speed is good, but pacing yourself. And then in that pace, it's like what is essential and what is, what's a tool and what's like a thing that actually moves the needle forward, right? Yeah, it's like I'm trying to figure out like one nice way to say it, because I kind of went on a bit of a like tangent there. It's just like a tendency I have. But I'll put it this way: it's like the essential pivot is that I think a lot of people are missing is that they're missing what's essential sometimes, right? They're just letting the noise take over, because it does look it is, quote unquote seductive, right? You see it all over social media, you see it all over the media period. And I think it's easy to just get swept up and be constantly trying new things, but it's almost like procrastinating really figuring out what matters. And that's what I think a lot of people need to focus on right now. Newer entrepreneurs in particular, having that discipline is useful. Yeah.
Discipline. And not getting caught in shiny object syndrome.
Yep. Bingo. Bingo, man.
Going
I get it. I get it
Yeah.
right now. It's like the peak of shiny object syndrome. I totally understand. And I try new stuff every day. Like I'm definitely going to admit that, but I don't let it get in the way of like productivity either, right? I don't let it get in the way of like, if we have some things that are working, there's no reason to just randomly shove something new in the, in someone's face. It's like, we have to integrate these things properly, make sure it runs well with the business, make sure it doesn't, collapse operations overnight because we try to just go for the next shiny object. So, and also context switching and, there's like, you could generate a lot of bad data with generative AI too. There's no reason to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
70 onboarding documents when your team is only 20, right? Like there's better things to do, even if it does seem like these tools are, you know, giving you that enterprise quality, giving you that like high level quality, just even from that, like cut down the noise a little bit, right? I think it's a good discipline. It's a good practice to have. And, again, you can add things in the future, just kind of go through the motion first and don't try to it's like going from A to Z versus
Yeah,
A,
yeah,
B,
yeah.
C, D, you know what I mean? Right. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's kind of the big advice there.
Okay. So I saw that you had a terminal illness at one point. How important or how did that shape who you are today and how you attack your business?
Oh, man, well, it's kind of, I mean, yeah, I don't bring it up as much organically because it was a while ago now, and it
Yeah.
was kind of before my career took off, but it impacted everything. I mean, a little bit, right? What something like that helps you realize, at least for me personally, is just how precious life is, right? I mean, it just there is and abundance, by the way, in that sense too. Like I didn't call it that back then, but in my mind, it's almost like, and I know not everyone has the same privilege to take risks and to do big things. And I guess I'm lucky I was in a position where I could do things like run a business in high school and had sort of like a stability that let me do that. But I think even in a lot of different aspects, even outside of running business, like there is value to staying optimistic, despite kind of the somber state certain parts of the world might be in, and certain states of the world might be in right now, and communities. But I think there is something to that like unrelenting passion not to give up and to keep moving forward. And that really impacted everything for me, right? Because for me, it was when I started a business and people asked me at that time why I was starting a business so young and so early. I'm like, why not? Right? Like, why not try something different? Same thing with like this idea of like pivoting and understanding like this was the intersection essentially for me, right? I went through something that showed me just how precious life is and helped me realize that at a formative sort of time in my life and formative age that there is so much more like beauty to experience in the world, right? There's so much more to travel and see. And even if you go to the same place twice, there will be different people, right? I grew up in Minnesota, and it's like a very different place now than it was, when I was growing up, right? But that's a beautiful. I see the beauty in that, right? I don't think there's that openness and that idea, that creativity that comes through. Like there's just everyone grows, right? And trying to hold on to the past too much. Like there's nothing wrong with looking at mistakes and nostalgia, nothing wrong with that. But there is a lot of power in being an individual who wants to move forward and also understanding your responsibility as a leader that if you're going to lead a team, especially in a space like technology and innovation, like good innovation comes from like I think positivity in leadership, right? I know that again, same thing like the brute forcing thing. Like if you're going to build a team and you're just going to churn and burn and burn these people out and not have them follow any vision or passion, you're just not going to get good results. Like that's just I've rarely, there may be exceptions to this rule, but I've rarely ever seen it work. I've worked with big companies, I've run my own companies, I've worked with a lot of startups, and I'm sorry to say I've never seen a founder who tries to like stick to the past and be super rigorous and like not adapt to the times. I don't see them get very far. Rather, I see them burn out, their teams burn out, and their product, just like even a good product idea, get totally, destroyed by
Yeah.
that idea and that hubris that comes with the inability to be a little bit more open to change and adaptation, and also just lacking that positivity, that abundant mindset towards progression and moving forwards. Yeah, going all back to literally going back to abundance and kind of what you started this whole episode on, right? Like that is the you know coming out of that experience. Like it wasn't even that it just I held myself to higher standards, knowing that I've been essentially given a second chance to keep going, right? And that I went through this big thing in my life, and it sticks with me every day in a call it subconscious way now, right? But back then, it just helped me understand like there is good risk to take because there is so much to experience and so much to have, like so much to see and feel, going around the world and continue to move on with lives. Yeah, sort of a more inspirational side of the, there's that. I wish I could give more holistic advice. Like I'm happy my health is good. And there's all that, like keep yourself healthy, happy, fit, I'm a big sauna and cold plunge person every day. Like that's done wonders for my health. Like there's all those holistic things
Okay.
I could say, but on a fundamental level, on like a leadership and mindset level, it all goes back to understanding that like, despite what the situation might be, having that positivity, not getting overly jaded, right? Like moving forward is the only way to go, and being open to that change and adapting, right? As that change comes to you. So yeah.
Yeah. So most people that had something experienced something like that, it would have tore them off the runway and completely stopped them. So how were you able to stay focused despite of that, Because that takes a tough mindset.
It does, yeah, and again, I do like there. I'm not going to say everyone has the same experience, and I can't even generalize too much because it is such a unique thing. Like there are situations where you're forced to like take time off of work, right? You're forced to, you have debilitating situations, right? That like until treatment is over, you're unable to move forward from that. So I do recognize those, and I'm just going to kind of say that the one thing that kept me focused was there was kind of a feeling of wanting to learn and experience that I tried to like, we talk about consumption of media these days, right? There's like doom
Yeah.
scrolling, other things, but there is positive consumption too. So I did a lot of reading, right? I did a lot of writing. I did a lot of introspection, but not in a way that I just like sat and like thought in my own head. I looked at outside things, and obviously I wasn't like networking or doing anything crazy at that time during that kind of period of my life. But what I was doing was I was just like learning. I was absorbing. I was observing, you know, uh, whatever I could from the room I was in, essentially, right? And at that time, like the like luckily the internet was a pretty big thing, and like we already had YouTube and everything. So I think it was a lot harder before that. But at the same time, again, like there was this sense of like I want to just when I come out of this, I want to be equipped to move my life forward in a way that's productive, that's meaningful, and that feeling, that openness, and like again, there is a level of positivity you have to retain too, because it can be very, very depressing. It can be very, very low for a lot of people at this point. But having that idea that when I come out of this, I'm going to be as strong as I am and smarter than ever, more intelligent than ever, and equipped because I took the time to sort of, I took this time to be with myself and to learn and to sort of experience the world as much as I could from the situation I was in. That that is a powerful thing. Like you have to, in a sense, you have to inspire yourself, right? Like
Yeah.
as cheesy as that might sound, like even listening to the right podcast, even listening to the right leader, TED Talk, whatever. I remember how impactful those things were. As for other people, it might just be another thing that they listen to in their car. For me, it was like a change in my career. I read Jobs, at a very sort of tough time. And I remember, like, as crazy as he was, as awful as things looked at different points, and whatever people might think of him, there was, I mean, he was practically homeless, and he was like, he did not have a very romantic life leading up to what he did at Apple. And even at Apple, he was forced out of his own company, right? And other stories like that, right? Where you saw people that literally came from nothing and used their vision, used their acumen, used this like ability to be a sponge, right? To change the world. And I think, and I will say, I think often looking at other people's stories is a way to toughen toughen your mind, toughen
Yeah.
that discipline. There's nothing wrong with it, right? We're all unique, but like nothing wrong with seeing how other people did it. And yeah, that was really inspiring. And I will say the one useful thing too is that through my life, at least a little bit earlier on in my life, I got to meet other people who also been had like the same exact thing that I had, and there was like a little bit of community. Like when I was, going to get treatment and stuff, there were people that I would see frequently, right? We were all kind of in the same boat, and seeing us kind of like over the years where we ended up, and how we're all like healthy and happy and everything, that was helpful too. Like almost a little bit of a support group, and that goes back to like building relationships with being in the rooms that there are rooms where people from your background, your unique situations, like they do get together, right? And finding those and being able to be a part of those and come up with people is also a really helpful thing too. Yeah, but then even just again, even if that's not an option, just reading about other people who've been through
Yeah. Yeah.
the trenches or been through something very crazy like that, it does inspire. Yeah, inspiring yourself is a part of it. I guess that's a
Yeah.
way to say it too. Yeah.
So you've been through a lot. We talked about your history from high school to now. So how do you inspire people now? What does your business entail now?
Yeah, two very different things actually. It used to be that I could just inspire people by doing what I did, right? Because I was young and I was kind of on the come up, right? But now, kind of, being seasoned and being a several time founder, the way that I inspire is more. It is interesting because like the work that I do is in R&D, right? AI, R&D, innovation. A lot of it is helping major companies, even cities and nonprofits. A lot of different kinds of companies adopt technology and keep up with it. Not so much on the engineering side anymore. Like that was where I got my start, right? But now I'm more of a, strategist, consultant, partner, right? In this case, they bring me in and I help build the departments, I help build the teams, I help build the disciplines, right? And it's a lot of like teaching and inspiring within a certain context and bubble, right? And I take some of those principles, but they come out very differently when I just inspire people, right? If I go to the startup scene, they could be like, we don't have, millions of dollars or massive budgets and massive teams to do all this stuff. So I've learned to sort of contextualize my inspiration, and it all kind of does come down to well, it's funny. I'm basically in the business of helping people pivot, right, and helping people adapt and personalize and prioritize, right, like to the times, the technology, to consumer demands. So that's what I do on the work side, and I also have a few awesome products and apps of my own that I own under that company that are killing it as well, and I'm able to work on. But going back down to sort of how I mentor students, I've done talks at like high schools and colleges and stuff too, right? So
Okay.
the way that I inspired there is I kind of like going back to that concept of an essential pivot. It's like, what's important to you? What do you know, right? What kind of intersection of life experience do you have? And then, you know, can you see the abundance, right? Can you see how quickly things are changing, and how do you embrace that, right? And so I think the way that I like to like sort of leave my mark and takeaway on podcasts and lectures, anything that I do, is to think about not just again, it's like acting on abundance fundamentally is what it is. It's like what's important to you and what needs to be changing, right? What can you kind of see in the horizon, but what needs to sort of pivot and change and slightly adjust, right, to get you there, or maybe even major shifts, right? And you might not have all the answers from day one, and it's also like I said earlier, it's not going to just necessarily jump to that conclusion, but how can you make those right pivots and how can you make those right turns to get to the top, right? To get to where you want to
Yeah.
be. And I think that's everyone like there. That's so different for everybody. So that's why it's an inspirational thing, right? I mean, at my work, I do it holistically, but for every single founder and every single person I meet, I can't possibly give them the journey, as well as I can with other contexts. But I can at least sort of speak to the concept of signal versus noise is a big one, right? I'll go with that one first, like cutting through the noise and understanding what's important. Understanding, again, your own intersection of experience, your career, everything that you've been through, and how to, use that. And then how to strategically align like yourself with a pivot, right? Like, okay, if you're going to make a change, what does that mean for yourself? What does that mean you have to like sacrifice? What, like, you have to put things away, right, to get up, and then what do you have to add, right? So once you have sort of all those things working together in tandem, it starts, sometimes the trail starts to present itself more and more, right? And then it is up to you to figure out, what that road is going to look like or how you want to walk down it. But at least having an understanding or having an understanding of what that might look like, and having an understanding of, pulling back from just trying to skip from A to Z and signal versus noise. I think that's really useful. But yeah, the funny part is, I mean, I do a lot of that at these companies I work with too, but with very different jargon, very different strategy. But it works. It's great. I've been a part of some very incredible projects that have hit millions of people in a week, right? Just like quick,
Yeah.
it took a year to get it off the ground, and it was even, some of these things were pre-generative AI. So when I was doing more machine learning, but like it still had the same impact of automating and changing things for the better. And I have a positive sort of outlook. Like I'm not a fire everybody and replace with agents kind of person, right? I'm more, I look beyond that hype, and I look at like what the future can really look like, and helping people understand that like consumers don't just want to talk to robots all day, right?
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
human element. There is value to what we have as humanity to help our sort of technology adapt. And these are just tools, right? And then it's how you use them. So yeah, hopefully that sort of makes sense. It's kind of an
Yeah.
interesting alignment. Like, I kind of mix the what I do with like how I inspire, even though those are kind of different things and said differently, but they are going back to sort of these core principles. Yeah.
So we're about to wrap up here. So what is one thing that you thought I would have asked, but I didn't ask you?
Man, I hate that question because it's like, like, I wish man, I never had like a easy answer off the top of my head. So I'll just think about it, but it's a good question. I, Man, I mean, your questions were so good, right? Like you went over some big things, but you prompted them in a way that I was able to connect.
Yeah.
I think, ooh, man. Okay. I will say that I have experience in startup investing, and I guess we didn't get to that part as much, right? But I think it would have been cool to like, just for the sake of time, I won't go on too much of a tangent here, but I think how you invest in startups and how you decide where your hard-earned money should, because I've been an angel investor, right? I haven't been like I haven't done investing where I've like taken other people's money and run my own firm or anything yet, right? That is in the pipeline soon. But I've mostly done my own. This is out of my own capital, out of work like money that I've earned, right? Being self-made myself. So it's having a mindset on finding good leaders, and how I sort of like, I am very much a team-based investor. I mean, I want to see revenue, I want to see a product, but I want the right person leading that initiative, right? And yeah, I could have gone into there could be a whole other episode talking
Yeah.
about how I've determined, and I'll be one to admit that I've never had I have like one angel investment that's still active, but for the most part, I have been an angel investor in companies that have, either sold kind of early or not quite succeeded, right? So I've never gone the distance to like help someone, ring the bell on the NASDAQ or something crazy like that. Yeah, it can still happen, right? But I've just made
Yeah.
bets in different kinds of places, and they just turned, I mean, a couple companies sold. So I'm proud to see that. And that's been super awesome. But I've invested in a few companies that just, the timing wasn't right, market wasn't there, whatever, right? So yeah, there's a whole mindset and how I applied that to that world as well. But it's taught me a lot. It's taught, like, beyond being a startup mentor and advisor, I evolved that into angel investing, and it's been super cool. Even today, I do a little bit less of it, but I plan to do more of it in the near future. It's been cool to sort of see, feel, and be in that position, right, of,
Yeah.
of being more of a uh, investor versus like, and sometimes you have to be hands off in that case too. Like, they don't want an advisor, they want an investor who's like strategic for one specific thing. So I have to sometimes even tone it down myself and be like, okay, like how can I really help this company with the one thing that they're missing, even if they have everything else going, and it's more of my capital doing the work, but maybe something else I can help them with too. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, could go into that all day. Like I said, I'll stop myself there. But
Yeah.
that would
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
I guess, that would have been like the question, right? Like, what does that kind of look like in that mindset and that process? I'm always happy to share more.
And just to break it down for the audience, what is an angel investor?
Yeah, so that is somebody who essentially invests out of their own capital, right, out of their own funds. So a traditional startup investor would go and they would use some of their own funds potentially, but they'd also go out from independently wealthy people or other firms, sometimes banks, whatever, partnerships, and they'd use that capital to invest. And then the firm has to make the return, right? And then you have to also pay that. So there's like several levels to it if you're doing what's called institutional investing. But if you're an angel investor, that is literally like, okay, I want to write a $25,000 check in an incredible startup and founder that I met. There's some legal ramifications. Like you have to be making some level of capital per year, and you have to have a certain net worth to like be able to do it. So this was not like a day one in my career of doing that,
Yeah.
right? And I was obviously I was reinvesting in my own business, which is more important in the beginning. But yeah, over the years, I was able to take advantage, and it's a good thing. I do some nonprofit and charitable stuff too, which is a totally separate thing, right? Angel investing is very much like a you will purchase equity and ownership in this company, and you're not necessarily expected to invest a bunch of times like maybe other investors would. You can just do it once, right? But then you might have that small piece of ownership, which again, if this company sells or goes public on the stock market, can lead to some incredible returns. And hey, if it folds and if it doesn't work out, it's also just a good opportunity to learn and to be a part of a startup's journey, right? And of a new
Yeah.
company's journey. So yeah, it's an honor. I will say it's like even the founders, like I respect people who say no to my like request to be an investor, or they say like I have strong boundaries about it, right? Because a good like founder, a good owner, a good CEO understands that they want the right people around them. They want the right village and the right tribe. And taking money from just anybody, right? Like you never know what could be predatory. You never know what might be a good deal for. You never know what this person could be trying to take you, right? Who knows, right? There's
Yeah.
scary things with giving a piece of your company away to somebody, right? They could make a decision. They could be on your board, and they could tank it, right? So yeah, it's been a humbling experience, been a huge learning experience, and it's like a totally different side of my career, which I don't do as much of. But a few years back, like during COVID in particular, I had a lot of experience doing it, and I made a lot of investments kind of at once. So it was a good, it was just an opportunity to accelerate my own understanding, right, and see some people succeed. So yeah,
Awesome. Hey, Nikhil, I just want to thank you for all the knowledge you share and
of
coming
course,
on
man.
here and sharing your heart. So, any last minute thoughts you have for our audience?
Man, I will say, as an author, as like a new author, right? I'm doing a book, no AI, right? Like it's not just some random, Claude write me something nice. It's a fully written from the heart, and I think I don't know if my editor will love it or hate it, but when they see it, hopefully they like it too. It's something that it started with me writing a lot of reflections and doing like content online, right? And now it's turning into something that I'm going to make a structured book, and I hope to share with the world. And what it's really taught me is the power of like there's a lot of reflection and rumination we do in our heads, but there's also a lot of like, I think there's so much power in understanding, going back to like pivoting and going back to changing and adapting with the times. I think there's a lot of power in being able to reflect and write that down and put that on paper. Right.
Like
So
journaling.
yeah, exactly. Essentially just journaling. Right. Yeah. I call it, I mean, you could do public journaling, which is, Substack, Medium, whatever. I like doing that more because I like to start conversations or social media. But yeah, even personally, like just being able to put your thoughts on paper, it's crazy how open to change and how much you can inspire yourself, like how much you see your journey progress. There's so many benefits to it. And even I actually, I'll admit, I even did like voice journaling for a while too. So even if you just talk into a mic for like 20 minutes a day or even less, I don't know, 5 minutes a day, like something that just helps you organize and speak your mind and put it on paper so you can look back at it and just put it out there. Big part of having that abundance mindset, big part about having that discipline that you need, and the ability to see that in yourself. You have so much you can offer to the world, right? And offer as a potential leader, as a founder, as someone who's doing anything. As I talk to athletes doing the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I talk to people who are just like they're in public politics, whatever it might be, right? In any sort of situation, this helps a lot of high performing people out, and I really recommend it. Yeah. But it's been an honor being on the show, man, and I hope I've given your audience something incredible to think about, and I'm always happy to obviously share links. I'll have to probably share some books and things with you afterwards, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
definitely not remembering some of the cool resources that I've been through, but they're also keep in mind those resources are now 14 years old, so I might have even share some of the newer stuff that I'm reading.
Yeah.
That's sort of like an adaptation, right? The modern version of what I was doing back then. So yeah,
Awesome. So, guys, if anyone resonates with anything Nikhil says, go ahead and comment. Let's have a conversation down in the comments and let's see what else we could learn from him. All right. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in to another awesome episode of Be Inspired Podcast, where we're inspiring you to live the abundant life you deserve. We'll see you guys next week.